As you can see behind me, there is a Steelers banner saying Steelers Nation. There's penguin posters and a penguin banner right there. However, I'm sitting in front of you right now wearing a Tennessee Titans Adam Humphries jersey. The reason I'm wearing it is because none other than the Steelers and Titans are kind of interconnected at this moment in time on March 13th, 2024, as the Tennessee Titans have just signed none other than former quarterback, sad as it is to say, former quarterback Mason Rudolph of the Steelers, and he is now on the Tennessee Titans depth chart. And we're here, I am here to talk about Mason Rudolph and if I think he is going to start for the Tennessee Titans organization. Now, as a Steelers fan, I am a big supporter of Mason Rudolph. I've been for the last 5 years. When he went in 2019, I was super excited, as many Steelers fans were, because when Ben Roethlisberger went down, I know a lot of people tend to forget this, but there was a very huge uprising of Steelers fans super excited to see a change when Big Ben Roethlisberger went down in Pittsburgh. Everybody was saying it's Rudolph season, he's the future, blah, 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 blah. Everybody was really excited for it. However, at moments, he kind of looked rocky and he kind of fell short. Now, obviously, when it comes to any type of quarterback, especially somebody as young as Mason, and I believe at that point, right around that time, he was a rookie. If not, he had only been on contract for a couple of years. So he obviously never really got a lot of playing time. Obviously at that moment in time, we also had a lot of other people in our depth chart, and Big Ben was rolling, and they had the killer bees and all of those different players and whatnot. So obviously Mason Rudolph was never going to see the light of day. This was the first opportunity in, multiple years pretty much where we would see a quarterback other than Big Ben for a giant extended period of time. And there was a lot of Steelers fans excited for this because they were tired of Big Ben. They were tired of, because he was getting old and all of these different things. And now Steelers fans beg for Big Ben to come back. And now this has nothing to do with the Steelers. This has to do with Mason Rudolph going to the Titans. But it just kind of shows how excited people were for Mason. And I kind of never left that bandwagon as a Mason Rudolph fan. I've always been a big supporter of him. Now, in 2019, he had some rocky moments with the Myles Garrett situation, and obviously he had a concussion after the Ravens game, which sent Devlin Hodges in to kind of finish out our season, and then we had Mason Rudolph go back. It was like a whole random thing, but nonetheless, a lot of people ended up turning on Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph ended up not being that guy. A lot of people sided with, I was going to call him Chuck. It's Devlin Hodges, Duck Hodges. They sided with him a lot more. As the seasons progressed on, Mason Rudolph kind of started a couple of other games, only started like 2 or 3, just kind of fell short of a lot of success. And Mason Rudolph was always just in Pittsburgh, never looked to as that guy. I feel like Mike Tomlin kind of always put him down further on the depth chart, although they would bring him back. They just kind of never really did anything with him. I mean, we even saw how apparent that was when they had Mitchell Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, and Mason Rudolph on the depth chart. This dude was never going to be in any room in Pittsburgh to start. Now, as the last couple of years have looked, other than 2023, Mason Rudolph has looked like a pretty inconsistent, at moments, backup. And I don't mean that in a negative way, because like I said, I really love Mason, but he never really reached that stardom that a lot of people had wanted. And I think a lot of people, like I said, were very high on him. Obviously, he was a late round draft pick. I recognized him whenever he was with Oklahoma State, and he blew out the University of Pittsburgh Pitt Panthers, and I was very depressed. And he had a really great showing, and I was always very supportive of the idea of having him on the team. And even up into the 2023 season, he never really got that shot. And even when he did, he kind of just folded a little bit. Now, that all changed in 2023 at the end of the season. They benched Mitchell Trubisky. Everybody in the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, locker room decided it was needing a change, and they put in Mason Rudolph. Mitchell Trubisky was not giving us those type of wins. He was losing to the Patriots. We finished out, lost to the Cardinals, lost to the Colts. It was just not looking too good. Mason Rudolph was pretty much the hero in Pittsburgh at the end of the 2023 season. And the reason I was so high on him as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and I even made an 8 quarterback list of who I wanted in Pittsburgh from 8 to 1, and Mason Rudolph was that number 1. selection. And a lot of people think I'm crazy. A lot of people think I'm stupid. But the fact of the matter is that Mason Rudolph looked great under a Matt Canada offense. And yes, I say Matt Canada offense because that is still Matt Canada's playbook, regardless of what all of you say. That is still Matt Canada's playbook. And the fact of the matter that he was able to make the offense look as good as it did the last 3 games of the season when we went into Seattle and we had never won a playoff game, or I shouldn't say playoff game because we can't play them in playoffs. Please do not yell at me. I'm correcting myself. Thank you, Steelers fans. We had never won, or we hadn't won the Steelers haven't won a game in Seattle in like 40 years. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, that's not true. Yeah, if you go back and look, it was like 1980 something. The Steelers hadn't won there in a very long time. For Mason to go in there where like our playoff, spot was on the line, and for Mason Rudolph to go in there and win since like the 80s is huge. We would always lose in Seattle. We struggled in Seattle. We always just struggled against Seattle. But Mason went in and won us the game. We had a crazy game against Cincinnati in Pittsburgh. And granted, yes, the Baltimore game was a little shaky, but there was a lot of rain. There was a lot of weird stuff happening in that game. Nonetheless, Mason got it done. We finished the last 3 games of the season 3-0. Mason Rudolph finished with 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 719 yards, and a 74% completion rate, which is pretty dang solid for a third-string quarterback and for a guy in Mason Rudolph. Now, his playoff stats, I believe he had I think it was 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. I mean, look, that Buffalo team, I don't understand what's going on in the Steelers right now when it comes to what they're doing with how they're playing in playoffs, because they always seem to go down 21-0 in the first quarter over the last 4 or 5 years. And I remember vividly back even against the Jacksonville Jaguars 4 or 5, 6 years ago at this point, where they were already down an absurd, I think it was 14-0. They're down against the Browns 14-0. They just don't do well in the first quarter, this Pittsburgh Steelers organization, over the last decade, I swear. But once again, not about them. The Steelers kind of were doomed to the start at this point against the Bills. But Rudolph gave it his all. And I really think that Mason Rudolph really showed a lot of bright spots. And I really was excited to see what the future held for him in Pittsburgh. However, did not appear that the future would hold anything for him in Pittsburgh, because obviously, as rumors started circulating, he was going to be put on the move. Now leaves you the question, wow, a lot of Steelers fans are kind of upset about Mason Rudolph leaving. However, they are pretty excited about Russell Wilson coming in here. And because of that, it left the question of, where does Rudolph go? Rudolph ended up signing with Tennessee. And now it leaves one more question. Will Mason Rudolph be the starter? And for all of you Tennessee fans out there, and for all of you other fans out there that are wondering the same thing that many people are wondering, and maybe some people aren't, Mason Rudolph is not going to start in Tennessee. Not yet. And I know a lot of people are, oh, not yet, not yet. We'll see. He's only on a 1-year deal, and he is going to be more than likely quarterback 2. I really can't see him being behind Malik Willis. I just can't. I don't think Malik Willis is that good. I think Will Levis is way better than Malik Willis. I from the very beginning in that 2022 draft, everybody was talking about all those quarterbacks, and everyone thought Malik Willis was going to be that guy coming out of the draft, and it ended up being Brock Purdy, the last pick in the draft, being that guy coming out of that draft class. And I never was really high on Malik Willis, and I still am not. So I really don't think Malik Willis is going to be that QB2. It's going to be Mason Rudolph, and he's going to be behind Will Levis. I think Tennessee wants to see what Will Levis will do. They've made all kinds of moves. Obviously, they have D-Hop still. They have Calvin Ridley. And I believe now they also have Tony Pollard. And I cannot exactly 100% quote that, but their team is different. They don't have Derrick Henry anymore, but they added a different wide receiver as another receiver that they can throw to other than D-Hop. So Will Levis will have a little bit more to work with. And now we'll kind of see over the next course of the season with, just a different coaching scheme and whatnot. We'll see kind of what Tennessee does going forth into the 2024 season with Will Levis under center. Now, the question will be brought up. Obviously Will Levis had 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and I believe half of those touchdowns came in one game, and it was against Tampa Bay, if I'm not wrong. And obviously it, a lot of people probably are wondering, oh, well, Will Levis hasn't been looking that hot either. And I mean, he does show signs of life compared to other quarterbacks in the NFL that have, been young and rookies and first years and second years, where they go in and you're like, oh, he shows signs of life. But I think Will Levis is way too young into his career before we justify or jump to any conclusions whatsoever. However, when it comes to Mason Rudolph, I don't know what this coach is like. I don't really know too deep into what this organization is like. However, I wouldn't be surprised that if Will Levis starts, not doing that good, he starts tanking just like any other quarterback. I don't think that they're going to leave Will Levis out there. I think that at some point they would throw in Mason Rudolph. And I think that it's kind of interesting because obviously, you don't want to see Will Levis fail. I don't want to see Will Levis fail. But at a point, there could be a point next season, even when he gets hurt, where Mason Rudolph obviously will come in. So yes, Mason Rudolph would start. But this conversation is about, will Mason Rudolph start at any point in the season? And my guess is probably not. And I don't know for sure. It's kind of hard to say because it's really hard to guess about what Will Levis is going to do based on trends of this year, how he looked this year. I would say probably at some point next season, Mason Rudolph would probably be the starter, and I would say probably about the halfway point. However, given that Will Levis was thrown in mid-season, Tennessee was a mess, and there's so much happening. Obviously, there wasn't a whole lot to work with. I mean, I'm going to give Will Levis the benefit of the doubt and say that he has a lot more growing to do. I think he'll probably have about Justin Fields numbers next season. I think he'll probably have somewhere between the 16 and 19 touchdown range. I don't think he's going to have a huge breakout year, but I think that he'll probably do solid, more likely. So what I'm saying is I don't necessarily think that Mason Rudolph will start. Do I think that he is a good starter? I do. And I think that for anyone that's in Tennessee that thinks that he could be, like, oh, if Mason Rudolph, has to go in because Will Levis is doing bad, or, well, obviously we're not hoping that Will Levis does bad, but if he gets hurt, would Mason Rudolph be good? I do think Mason Rudolph would suffice. Personally, I mean, like I said, I think he showed a lot of promise in the last 3 games for the Steelers. Obviously, he didn't look super solid over some of the other games. I mean, he did pretty decently. He had a winning record for the Steelers, in 2019. I think overall, I'm pretty sure he had a winning record for the Steelers. I feel like the winning records is just kind of like a big thing at this point for the Steelers. I feel like the Steelers are always just connected to the winning record kind of agenda, but nonetheless, I mean, I think that Mason Rudolph is a solid guy, and granted, he's going to be inconsistent, but I think that, when it comes to a quarterback standpoint, I think, with him having the weapons of Calvin Ridley and D-Hop and Tony Pollard and pretty solid, offense in Tennessee, I think Mason Rudolph would be a pretty decent starter if given the opportunity or given the possible chance of starting in Tennessee. Now, do I think he's going to start? Like I said, probably not. He's only on a 1-year deal, and I think that they're going to really want to run with Will Levis. Maybe Mason Rudolph could be a person of development for Will Levis. I also think that with Tennessee, I think Will Levis would probably shine. I think, like I said, he, in Tennessee, they have some pretty decent weapons. Now in going into the 2024 season, obviously some of the age, is going to hinder them a little bit. But I think that in Tennessee, I think Will Levis will be that guy. And I think that, in my opinion, I think he'll probably have 18, 19 touchdowns. However, for some reason he gets hurt, or I am completely wrong and he doesn't have 18, 19 touchdowns, Mason Rudolph does go in. Tennessee fans, do not fret. I think Mason Rudolph will do solid for you and hopefully get you to a winning record or a record that will suffice. And I would hope that that would be like a 8-9, 7-10, or, at that point in the season, if things are crumbling to that point, get you into a decent range. Now, I do hope, obviously, for you guys that you guys do finish out pretty strong. Like I said, Mason Rudolph is a very he seemed to be a very humble guy when he was in Pittsburgh. He was just very thankful to be able to start and being given the opportunity to once again play in front of the fans. You're going to get a really good guy in Mason, as you know, many of these players coming up have been. You're not going to get a diva. You're going to get a good player. 2019 aside, I know a lot of people try to paint that picture of Mason Rudolph as a terrible person because of the Myles Garrett situation, but looking and watching him play over the last couple of years, he's a really good guy, and he really is passionate about the teams that he plays for, and he just really wanted a fresh start, and I really do hope you guys give it to him, and I think he's really excited to play for you guys. So, like I said, in conclusion, and I know I've said it a couple of times now, I don't think Mason Rudolph will start this season unless something drastic happens, like, for example, Will Levis getting injured or Will Levis playing like doo-doo. And even then, guys, in Tennessee, I think Mason Rudolph will be solid enough for you guys to get a solid, decent finish for your season. But obviously, tighten up from a Pittsburgh fan. I am very supportive of what is next for you guys, and let's see what happens. But in the meantime, if you have any other questions, comments, and concerns when it comes to Mason Rudolph, please leave your comments in the section below. I'd love to respond to them. I kind of just go off of a whim. I know Josh, who is my counterpart on this show, who is the actual host, I'm more of the co-host, will usually have a script. I don't have a script. I kind of just go off of what I am typically doing. And he actually just called me right now, and I don't really know why. He's probably, I don't know. He's probably going to be talking about how the Bengals are the best team of all time, and I disagree. But nonetheless, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you agree, leave a like. If you disagree, just leave a comment. And if you really like the content, you want to see more of me, if you want to watch the videos, go check out our video what's the word, collection, catalog. We have a lot of different videos about different teams and all different types of players, so you won't be bored and you'll have hours of content to go through. So definitely go and check out our video catalog on our YouTube channel, and if you like us enough, hit that subscribe button. In the meantime, go do something nice for anybody that is in your life, I would probably say. I don't really know how Josh does his little outro, but nonetheless, thank you all so much for watching, and yeah, talk to y'all soon.